Good morning, folks. We're just going to wait a few minutes before we start the webinar properly, just to give everyone a chance to join us. Again, folks, good morning. We're just going to wait another moment to let everyone join us before we begin. Okay, let's get started. Welcome to today's digital broadcast from the manufacturer in association with the Institute for Manufacturing at the University of Cambridge. I'm Dylan Cunningham, Conference Manager at the Manufacturer magazine, and I'm joined today by Dr. Florian Urmetzer, Course Director at the Institute for Manufacturing. In his work, Florian looks at value in complex service ecosystems, and specifically he's focused on helping managers understand that value exchange and using that to make improvements to processes and change business models. Florian's presentation today, which is titled Ecosystem Thinking for Strategic Planning, explores ecosystems as a concept and ecosystem mapping. We'll then go into some insights on how managers can leverage their ecosystem to their advantage, and then we'll look at some examples of how this has been done in a few different environments. Before we hear more from Florian, I want to remind listeners that this is actually the final installment in a three-part series of webinars that the Manufacturer and the Institute for Manufacturing have been running as we count down to Smart Factory Expo in Liverpool next week. If you haven't already, you can access the two previous webinars on demand. You've signed up for this webinar, so you should have an email in your inbox somewhere that will let you access the two previous ones, or you can find them on our website, which is themanufacturer.com. As a whole, the webinar series explores some of the biggest issues facing manufacturers today, and the Institute for Manufacturing will also be covering these issues in a series of workshops at the Smart Factory Expo. These workshops are free to attend for all manufacturers, and they're a great reason to make your way to the Expo next week, Wednesday and Thursday. That's the 13th and 14th of November in Exhibition Centre, Liverpool. The workshops are free. If you haven't already, the Smart Factory Expo, if you pre-register, is free. If you'd like to do that, then you can head to www.digital-manufacturing-week.com or to search Digital Manufacturing Week on Google. I hope to see you there next week, but for now, let's get started on this digital broadcast after a couple of housekeeping notes. If you have questions during Florian's presentation, please use the Ask a Question button on your screen. We'll get to as many of these as possible at the end of the presentation. After this broadcast, we'll send you a copy of the recording along with our contact details if you'd like to follow up with us. Over to you, Florian.
Thanks, Dylan, and thanks for the very kind introduction and for inviting me. I wanted to basically discuss a couple of things, and I've seen a list of attendees, so some of you may already know a part of this, but I would like to actually get to a couple of specific things that I'm gonna use to detail some work that we're doing currently, or that is just in the process of being published. So first of all, I'm going to discuss what an ecosystem is, how we explore it, which some of you may already be slightly familiar with. Then look at how we can actually use these to your advantage, but then as well look at how this actually fits into digital overall. So I'm always going to make a reference to a general ecosystem, but then as well what we actually consider when we're talking about platform ecosystems. And then give examples in between. So the agenda that I set in is relatively loosely is to talk about ecosystem mapping. Is a technique that we've developed here in IFM over really the last 5 years, and we've now running workshops on these things, do executive teaching and so on. So lots of things going on around that, and this is generally about ecosystems. I'm going to go into this in a moment. Then we talk about platform ecosystems, and what we actually think about when we're introducing the thought of the thought of digital. give a couple of examples where the differences are, or where we can basically like kind of reduce complexity and increase the complexity, and then give a couple of strategic thoughts, specifically a study which I've been conducting with the Technical University in Munich in collaboration, where we looked at platform providers and how they actually kind of refresh or think strategically about building or then refreshing or extending platforms and platform ecosystems. So from a wider sense, where we're sitting on this, so to say, is this is a 5-step model from IFM that's been developed by our colleagues here in IFM from Education Consulting Services, and we're really at the place where we kind of still maybe exploring, but we're understanding the value which we can create, or the value which we can exchange between partners, between organizations, and really to understand in detail before we basically define exactly what we're going to do. So outcome of these workshops that we're running here, and out of the research that we've done, the outcome is really kind of to be able to grab either an innovation or a new idea, or then to actually have a deep understanding of how to extend an ecosystem and how to be more strategic about it. And therefore, the next step then is pretty much technology road mapping, or similar techniques, or building a new vision, so to say, which can be driven to. So it's really strategic thinking. So let's move away from the where we sit, and let's just have a think about what a business ecosystem is in the first place, and why we're considering this. So what we started off with when we started the work was really the definition that there's firms and organizations and enterprises who value exchange, and this is I'm going to go into this a little bit more in depth in a moment. But really to think about the value propositions that is that are basically being provided, specifically thinking about a product which is the outcome of the ecosystem. So what we want to really do is basically take a product service or product service system and kind of use a looking glass, so to say, to look through this and see which companies are all involved. So realistically, if you think about the products you're providing to your customers, if you think about these products, then you have a different set of organizations. There may be a subset organizations that are collaborating on all of those, but there may be a subset of organizations that are slightly different. And the influences on these products may be slightly different as well. And we really want this granular understanding of separating this. So getting away from a loosely coupled network, but really getting to kind of an understanding of what's happening exactly in these collaborations between organizations. So this is the first thought on a business ecosystem, what this is. Then the next thing is, when we talk about platform ecosystems, then we normally basically take digital in there, and of course companies like Uber, like Airbnb, and so on, they're always considered like kind of the lighthouse firms to basically build platforms. But we can as well, of course, find these platforms in many smaller organizations, or in heavy machinery, heavy asset companies. So as an example, looking at companies that build heavy machinery for building sites, and they now all control these assets and get data of the assets to understand the health of the machine, and therefore they're running a digital platform to have a value proposition and to return either service offering or additional information to their customers. So these are somehow the differences. So when we talk about platform ecosystems or platforms in general, then we really talk about a digital connection between the actors. When we talk about business ecosystems, we basically take a little bit of a wider view. So first of all, after we've kind of given the definition a little bit, what I would like to do is basically give the opportunity to make your voice heard, so to say. And this is, what do you consider your status at the moment when it comes to digital platforms, and what is your status of yeah, of developing those. So are you interested in this? Are you more are you just exploring what's happening to understand what's happening next? Are you owning a platform already? So are you actually like kind of actively involved in administrating a platform, or then are you participating in a platform? So you may receive important data. You consider this to be vital to your business model or to your organizations. So next, what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to take, before we see the results of this, I'm going to take a little bit of time to kind of think a little bit about the background of this. So traditionally, we actually talk about supply chains, and I'm often getting asked by people, what's the difference between this ecosystem thought and then supply chains? The difference is really, if we're thinking about supply chains, we really think about a process, so to say, to generate a form of value. So that means someone may mine some metal, someone then does some metal bashing, then someone puts some color on it, and like kind of, a couple of steps later, we basically have a big digger, or we have a product which can be sold somewhere to either customer, to a distributor, or then as well to an end user. And when we consider ecosystems, what we really think about is we think about more about end customer or customers. We think about political influences. We think about the competition as well. So what does the competition do to this supply chain, or to this like kind of to this ecosystem of organizations? So is the competition potentially disruptive? Is the competition moving away from this, what's happening there, and as well to innovations? So what happens to this complexity of a network, or to this complexity of the ecosystem that is built around this one product, yeah, with considering all these different actors. So we basically just going a little bit crazy and indulging on the complexity of this, rather than just to think about physical, or like physical goods or services being basically spread around or shared between actors. The most important thing about this is, and this is what our research in this shows, is we actually have the opportunity to think about multiple end users or multiple customers. So when we think about our products, normally, or many organizations basically say, well, there's someone who pays for it potentially. There's potentially someone who uses it, and there's someone who may actually get the outcome of the product in the first place. So if you think about a digger as a product, then you have someone who uses the digger, so the digger driver, but then there's someone who's paying for it, and then there's someone who's basically living in the house afterwards. So when we think about digital, then we really consider a subset of these organizations. So normally then we basically build a platform that exchanges somehow digital data or value, digital data or information that comes out of this digital data, or then actions out of this data, which basically triggers actions automatically by individuals. So it's really like kind of considering that, and it's really good to actually look at the complete ecosystem and the business ecosystem, really, to consider who needs to be drawn in or who needs to be shared this value with. I'm giving you an example of a company that is relatively good in this, which is Uber. So Uber thinks about their customer, but then thinks about their driver as well. So the driver is actually considered more important, because the Uber knows that they're not going to make very much money if they don't have enough drivers. So therefore they actually give them a lot of digital services as well, which we don't, as Uber users, may not use, may not see. So therefore they get offers for cars, they get offers for insurances, and they usually get them pushed digitally towards them. So as well, when there's a surplus of drivers, or if there's too many drivers on the road, or there's not enough drivers on the road, they as well get push notifications. You can earn some more money now. It's 0.7 or 2 point something the normal price. So therefore you can earn some money now if you go online and you're driving. So therefore we call this gamification. So there's like kind of information streams which are considered value add-ons to certain consumers of this more complex platform. So therefore they think very much about like who they're partnering with, who they're thinking about as well. Local local governments and governance, they consider very much and think about who they may give data about, which may be in their interest. So before we go to the next, to a little bit more depth, we're going to have a look at where you are standing with your with the results of the poll. Thank you very much. Interest in the topic: 44% exploring to build one, 34% and we participate in one is 6%, and then ownership of digital platform is 60%. So very interesting result, and like if it shows as well what we are seeing. One thing that I find interesting is we participate in one is oftentimes, of course, we don't really notice that we are participating in one. Or we may not be aware. It's not belittling everybody who has basically said we participate in one, or everybody who said I'm not. It's just a kind of a fact of this seamlessness of business and giving our digital information, which we receive and give. But it's very good, because this means as well that in the rest of the presentation I can focus a little bit more about, if you're interested in a topic, or if you're exploring to build a platform, then on how to give you a little bit of insights on how to think about these things. So now basically I've kind of told you what a digital platform is and what a business ecosystem is, and what I've not really done yet is kind of giving you a little bit of information or thought process on how to actually what to do about this. So this so what question, so to say, that is for me as a practical oriented researcher, or as a researcher who likes to work with practice, is very important. So it's relatively easy to actually do ecosystem mapping in the first place and think about this complexity. What I always find is a success when you do this with a company, or with multiple companies, and after 5 to 10 minutes or half an hour of actually mapping this ecosystem, people step away from it and kind of go, "Oh my God, I expected it to be complex, but not this complex, really." The most important aspect of this is, number one, is really focus on one product or product service. So this means really drill down into, this is the product or product service. So don't take too much. The complexity will rise really, really quickly. And by focusing on one product service, you can really nail down as well what your suppliers or what your partners are actually doing, what the competition is doing specifically around this product service or this product. Then while you're mapping, you can already note down a little bit of detail, or then later have a moment where you note down details on the actors. So what are they actually contributing, and as well the thought of what could they be contributing. So what are they doing? What are they contributing? But oftentimes we don't actually take from our collaborators what they're really good at, right? Or what they consider themselves to be really good at. So the thought of what could they contribute sometimes then leads to, oh, this is interesting, because this may be actually very good or the advantage of the product or product service system we are offering. Hence, a bit of an innovation. So I'm just going to very briefly go into value creation and value capture between partners and business ecosystems. I've noted there's a links set of additional material by the end of the presentation, so you can read and think a little bit more about this. But it's really this notion of every single actor within this ecosystem actually creates and captures value as a return mechanism between everybody else in this ecosystem. And if it's just that if the customer is there, then a partner of this ecosystem may have the existence secured, or may get a share of what the customer pays. So, and this is not just on a monetary end, but this is as well on a non-monetary end. So therefore, influencers, for example, are normally not in ecosystems and receiving money from the ecosystem, but they still have an existence because of the ecosystem. And so if you look at meat production, for example, as a wider ecosystem, then we could be saying that NGOs that look at the health of animals, for example, have this sole existence because we are consuming meat in the first place. So therefore, there's a value creation and a value capture between the ecosystem and the influencer, or then specifically potentially between individual actors and these, for example, NGOs or legislators or other types of influence. I don't want to go into too much into depth into this, but this is I just wanted to show you or give away to you like kind of a layout that we use. So on the left hand side, you can see the ecosystem number 1, ecosystem member number 2, and you can see like kind of to and from. So what is the value that we create and capture? Direct value really means like kind of what does the organization pay for? So if I buy a car, for example, then I really like if I receive a car and I give some money. But then there's indirect value with this purchase as well, right? So as an organization, if I buy a fleet of cars or if I buy a car to enable people to drive around, then I actually give something to the organization by owning and having this car. This may be so all these different aspects, and we've done very many studies on this and worked with very many organizations on this, large and well as well very small. It always comes down to indirect value being created and captured on a level for the company, on the level for the managers, strategically, as in it enables them to enforce or reinforce build a strategic intent or a capability, and then finally it increases or reduces risks. So this is really like kind of your ecosystem mapping in a nutshell. As a next step, then it's really creating this clarity, like we said in the 5-step model on the first place. We've made very good progress for companies and with companies taking the details out of this and change ideas that come out of this process really into a technology roadmap. And this as well, of course, if you now start thinking about your digital again, you can really think about like kind of where do you draw these boundaries for your digital platform, and where you draw your boundaries for who receives information from this. You can really start to strategically think about who you want to attach to this platform. So next, a second brief poll. So really, the question I'm posing here is really, what do you feel is your next steps when it comes to digital platforms now? So we participate or own in a digital platform, and we think about the wider business ecology, which may be helpful. We participate in or own a platform, but we do not think about this. So therefore, we should really like kind of start like kind of considering this maybe, or we don't have a digital platform, but I think this will help our business because, of course, it's not just related to digital platforms, but as well in for wider business. And then we do not have a digital platform and not sure if this will help my business in the first place, which is fine as well. So while you're answering this, as a next part, I really would like to go and have a think or have a thought process of capability building. So of course we understand that if we all have an internal capability, so therefore we can do metal bashing or assembly, for example, or can do something which is very good to actually produce the output, the product or this product service. But then when we think about digital platforms, we've kind of started to think about organizations being able to what is it that drives them, or how do they strategically think about extending this platform's capability, and therefore how do they actually motivate or organize people to, number one, find new things to do with this platform, hence to extend the value creation, but then as well to kind of think about how to actually make your participators in the platform really like if interested in participating. Just want to have a very brief look at the results from the poll question. Fantastic. I'm I'm very glad to announce that the last question seems to be not the case. So therefore, people actually find it helpful, which makes me obviously very happy. And my long, lonely nights in the library, I am an academic at the end of the day, worthwhile. I will as well pass that to my students, which will give them motivation as well. We participate in a digital platform. We think about the wider business ecosystem already. Seems to be 40%. We don't not think about the wider ecology. Only 30%, 13%, which is great. We do not have a digital platform, but this may or this will help my business 47%. So really kind of a split 50-50. Relevant there, which obviously like kind of is a great reconfirmation of the work we're doing here. So thank you very much for that. As well, if you have additional questions, clarification questions, you can just as a brief reminder, Dylan was talking about this earlier. You have the question button which you can ask, so you can ask some questions. As I said earlier, I really want to go into this capability mechanisms for platform ecosystems now. So this is a study that I've done with Technical University of Munich. Tobias Ryazanov and colleagues have been working with me on this over the last really 2 years. And we started off and said, well, actually, we now see these digital platforms springing up and companies basically doing ordering via digital platforms, for example. So you now you can order concrete using an app. So therefore, if you're at the building side, you can set up this app with concrete companies, concrete delivery companies, and concrete makers, where you can say basically, I need six trucks of concrete, 8 o'clock on Monday morning. And therefore, the seamlessness of ordering something relatively simple as concrete actually like kind of is way easier. The app enables you as well to basically specify exactly the location where the trucks should be waiting or parking and lining up. All these things that are potentially in there are actually like kind of covered by this app. So we basically see them springing up everywhere, but we really started to ask these providers of these platforms and these companies that went into this this thought process or went and were relatively what we considered relatively successful in building these platforms, what they actually do. And this is basically before creation, during the creation, and then after the creation, but then as well throughout this, what is the similarities, what everybody seems to be doing throughout this process. So basically maximizing the platform effectiveness, which you can see on the bottom. So I want to start on the left-hand side in the top level. So it's really before you start building this platform, and this is really about aligning the partners by defining or determining the future business opportunity. So really, like kind of one thing that was mentioned was innovation alignment. One thing that was all about basically coordinating between the different actors that you've decided and you want to actually enable to do more seamless business, so to say. And one company had very, very good experience in basically doing business transformation workshops, where they really invited all the partners that they wanted to have, where they were considered the core partners of this this platform, to really like in a workshop through what needs to change in the organization, to then go away and have a think about individually how you can actually change your organization and align kind of like a roadmap, then align deadlines and when you need to have servers standing or you need to have your IT aligned, when you have to have your ducks aligned to basically to make this potentially minimal viable product in the first instance, when to make this work. So then the second thing was enable partners by developing necessary new capabilities through this information platform, through information as well being spread, and through potentially marketing services platforms. So therefore really to think about what are the aspects that you need to communicate to your partners, but as well to your wider ecosystem to educate them to actually use this platform. So if you're thinking about, it's really the thought of market readiness. and creating or incentivizing this market readiness. So therefore, you need to as well educate them that they make the most out of this, and then of course as well see the value behind this what you're actually doing or wanting to do with this digital platform. Then support your partners through new development of complemental things. So really enable technical guidance. So who are your internal technology people who are actually going to the partner side to support their technical people to build these interactions and to build the technical domain knowledge to actually make this exchange of data happening. To offer free technical assistance for pre-sales as well, to actually enable your customers to actually bind onto this platform, and to have potentially exclusive technical services for preferred consumers or for preferred customers, as well as for preferred contributors to your platform. So, and then after you're actually like kind of rolling this out and you're actually developing this, then you come into a place where you really want to motivate your partners to engage with this and grow this platform and build this new platform ecosystem. So really like kind of thoughts about open markets, gamification in general. So like kind of, do you rank your partners? Do you rank your customers? Do you rank service staff that is acting through through these platforms? To have some form of customer satisfaction index, to channel the feedback which you're actually receiving. So the question, it comes back to what we were discussing earlier, is like, if you're building something like this, besides a monetary reaction or action, what is the side effects that you're going to have? What is the intangible or the value that you want to capture from your customers or from your customers potentially, and what you want to enable? So how do you actually design and like channel this feedback that you're receiving through these means of digital control, and how do you optimize this then as well after you've built it the first time? So maximize the platform's ecosystem attractiveness. Many people were talking about financial incentives to sell. So therefore, really getting the workforce or the sales force out there and incentivize them to actually sell digital or through digital platforms. So hence make them as the parts of the sales process, so that they're not having the feeling they're alienated and they're not going to be important anymore in the future. Preferential access, cost reductions, free services, a trial, try 3 times and get 10% off or something like this. People were talking about create new partners on the platform, so increase collaboration or competition, potentially think about new partners who may take more value out of participating in a platform like this. So for example, startups, right? So many large companies very much miss the importance for startups to actually be announced on or be recognized on the market. So therefore, startups are very grateful to actually participate in digital endeavors like platforms. Have regular communications. So have a communication channel to all your partners. What your roadmap is going to be, what you're going to develop next, so that you can align with them. Technology evangelists, I really like this because it's kind of this spreading of best practice. Of course, technology evangelists always, I think it sounds a little bit Silicon Valley in a way, but it's really the thought of who's actually visiting these partners, understanding the technology and the roadmap, understands the business side of it and the technology side of it, and can really coordinate between these different partners to really like kind of communicate the depth of the technology as well as the business, but then as well have thought process on how everybody gets value out of this. Co-innovation contracts, as when align contracts when certain innovation will be done. So contract with your partners that you will be intending or then definitely aligning to certain dates. Build joint ventures. You can spin out companies as well and separate them. We've talked this in earlier webinars as well, that you, by driving innovation, you may actually choose to not do this through your brand image. Standardize the exchange specifically on digital platforms is of course important. Build working bodies where potentially you decide on standardization with your collaborators as well and integrating them. Make strategic acquisitions of obviously, like, and it is what many companies do, specifically larger ones. See investment operations, or then see consulting services. As a final thought, I just want to run this past you. And this may sound a little bit disconnected, but it certainly came up as well in our study. So there's a colleague, an academic colleague who's in the US, who's basically defined a three-step process to innovation. This is really like kind of this sensing of information or sensing of ideas out there, which we now consider more and more to actually be an active process within an organization. So really, who's the person in your organization that kind of goes to business transformation workshops, senses business opportunities for your organization, and drives this alignment of sensing activities with other organizations, so that your pipeline and your innovation pipeline is actually already early on thought and aligned with other organizations. So who's basically a personal account manager from an innovation point of view, who picks up early organizations, and what's the process then to really explore the ownership, so like kind of who can free finances and so on, who can stimulate your partners to either go with you or then to share these potential new configurations of your digital platform. And then really your transformation, so enable the partners to develop this capability, but as well to provide technical guidance again, and to provide tools and collaboration to really reconfigure this platform before you start going live, and as well to test across platform that these new functionalities actually work. So really a three-step process to think about really the sensing, this creating clarity of how this idea that was generated may work or then may not work, because obviously you may always have a kill process in there as well. So you may see this as a funnel. You may have very many ideas, but you don't really have to go through with all of them. And then really to start investing in reconfiguring yours as well as your partner's ecosystem or platform attachment or platform ecosystem. So this is really like what I wanted to go through. So really ecosystem mapping as a background exercise and as a thought process, then really thinking about platform, giving a couple of examples, and then kind of to build or give some strategic thoughts really on this. So my key takeaway to this session is really really to think about your wider ecosystem, and then to define your platform, and to define why you actually want to bind in certain players within your ecosystem, or why you want to transfer potentially data to them, or want to give them the opportunity to participate. Really define, so first of all, really to define the product or product service, note the details on the different actors, what do they contribute, what could they contribute, and then as well drilling that down into your platform provisions. So I'd invite you now for 5 to 10 minutes to pose any questions you may have. Dylan, you're online again because you're seeing the questions being posed at the moment.
Yes. So I think we have time for a couple of questions. There was one that I want to get to first. Guys, while we're doing this, you can feel free to put your own questions in using the Ask a Question button. Just if you have anything you'd like to elaborate on that was included in Florian's presentation. So the first question I'd like to get to was actually put in the chat. And someone is asking, could we have some examples of the application of digital platforms in hard or traditional manufacturing?
Yes, of course. I've mentioned two already. One was a concrete manufacturing company. I think this is pretty much public knowledge, so therefore we can talk about this directly. So we're talking about Cemex. Cemex have decided a couple of years ago, I mean, really that, concrete is not really very sexy, and concrete is not really something which nobody else can can produce. So therefore, the innovation opportunity within the product, even though they're obviously doing a lot of innovation in the first place, so they do interesting concretes that basically like drain water, for example, which you can just pour somewhere, and then you have water doesn't actually stay on top of it, but actually gets drained through the concrete. So they do interesting innovations, but generally concrete is a product which everybody can create relatively easy. You just need a sand mine, my understanding, and a couple of trucks to distribute it. So what they've really started was, of course, building more of an international network or international expansion of concrete producing companies, and of course making them as lean as possible. But then on top, they basically started to put an app which is called Cemex Go, where you can actually you can order concrete by the truckload. So you can basically define Monday morning you wish to have six tons of concrete. As you may be aware, concrete needs to be poured continuously in on most building sites. So you can't actually pour a little bit of concrete and then wait for 2 hours and then keep pouring. But it needs to, when you want to build a structure, it needs to be continuously poured so that there's no break opportunities. So you can set up this app, and then the people on the building site can use the app to actually order the concrete at a certain time slot, or then change time slots in the first place. There's additional things that they found out by working with their customers, what is important to them, as in location, for example. Many of the sites where they're delivering concrete to don't actually have an address, because obviously it's building sites, so usually there's not really streets and roads built. So you can actually define you can use the GPS within a mobile phone to actually define the location where the concrete should be delivered to. And the payment structure of this later on then is digitized as well. So they actually get the payment through as well. So they've not really innovated. They've just made the transaction with the customer way more smooth, so to say. So offering this opportunity for them to actually build that. One additional thing that they've done as well is in areas where they don't have their own concrete factory and where they may have capacity issues, they've built in collaborators. So they've decided which concrete production companies they collaborate with. So you may actually order through them, but then you may still get a subcontractor making the concrete, a Cemex truck picking it up, or then like a subcontractor making the concrete and their truck basically delivering the concrete. So it comes more closely to an Amazon for concrete, so to say, where like if you have a marketplace that they do. Another option to mention is Caterpillar. We've been working here with Caterpillar for many years. They've been building a digital platform around their machinery. So what they do is when you buy a Caterpillar, normally they're digitally enabled. So therefore they transfer information via the telephone network back to Caterpillar. And this information then is used to actually give insights onto the machine. So they use that internally to get insights into how the machine is working overall, and then of course look at fleets of machinery to feed back into the research and development. But then as well, they use this information to basically sell back services. So you can pay Caterpillar to actually do preventative maintenance, or then you can as well, in brackets, lease a truck or a digger from Caterpillar, which then gets optimized by them, and their use gets optimized. So one example of this which I was very impressed with, was they can measure the GPS location in mines, for example, for mining trucks. And when there's a gear change in the mining truck, that means a lot more diesel goes through the engine. So of course what happens is the mining truck should be actually like kind of locked into one gear and then go up a slope. The slope should be at a certain level, and this gear change, if there's a gear change, basically that means that the slope is not really correct anymore. So already after a couple of gear changes at the same location, they already know that that's a location where they need to actually do some improvement on the whole road, which saves, in the end of the day, saves a lot of energy, as in diesel outgoing, which is a capital cost for the mining industry, for the customer. So therefore, they can give information on direct on locations where whole roads need to be fixed to actually reduce the capital cost, which is diesel. So these are examples of use of digital platforms or use of digital in this. A little bit longer than I was planning in the first place, but of course I can give 16 more examples similar to that.
Yeah. No, that's great. Very detailed examples there. Okay, and there's another question that's just come in the chat again. We have a few waiting in the Q&A box as well, but this one is a question we always get asked at these things. Risk management, how does that relate to building a platform?
Yeah, this is a fantastic question. This is exactly the reason why looking at your wider ecosystem is really a very good idea. Of course, building a digital platform can increase your risks or reduce your risks. And this really depends not only on your terms and conditions and on what the lawyers make people sign, but as well on potentially a digital platform potentially binds in your customers to actually do business with you and to increase satisfaction, which of course reduces the risk of your customers departing or as well spreading the business over multiple suppliers.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's really this detailed work and this really detailed understanding is very much not just on an investment side, as in is it worth spending money on this, but as well on a risk side. So if you want to participate in a digital platform and you get offered by a collaborator or by a downstream firm to supply using digital platforms or increase efficiency through digital platforms, of course you create dependencies towards this company as well. But as well, of course, you enable them to do more seamless business. So you may actually be able to reduce overheads inside your organization as well. But of course, you need to consider these things and consider these opportunities to then action them as well. So therefore, if you're reducing overheads, then what are these overheads going to do in the future? What are the tasks that you can strategically enable your organization to actually to let them do, which will be worth something and extending your business rather than just letting people go or basically just connecting the platform and having shorter working times. So the question is very, very relevant because it's not there's not a one-stop answer to this. It really depends on what you do in the nitty-gritty detail. But this is what the whole conceptualization of this actually should be turning out or giving you back to understand these risks that are associated with it.
Okay. Yes, and someone has asked specifically about non-disclosure agreements, and are typical non-disclosure agreements sufficient for these kind of digital platforms?
That's actually it's a good question. So I would say that it depends what you're sharing on your digital platform. So therefore, if you're knowing Caterpillar, if they distribute so you can just buy back or you can just purchase the information from your fleet, so to say, from Caterpillar, which your fleet generates. Of course, you can put just for purpose of generality. There's firms, of course, that allow you to put sensors on there as well, which you can then use to get information off your machine as well. But so you can purchase this information. So therefore. There is, it's an interesting question if an NDA would actually be interesting in this area in the first place. So therefore, having an NDA with Caterpillar to not share your information with other parties. It's a very interesting question. I haven't really come across this discussion in the industry in a wider sense.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we do have a few more questions here, but unfortunately, I think we are about out of time because we have a few announcements to make before we finish up. But listeners, you will get our contact details. So if there's something specifically you'd like answered, do get in touch and we will get back to you as soon as we can. So the first thing we'd like to mention is that next week, again, it's our Digital Manufacturing Week in Liverpool. So on Tuesday, the 12th of November, IFM is running their digital briefing on strategic approaches to digitalization. And you can see on your screen there the different topics that are going to be covered. So do join us there if you can. It's in Sensor City in Liverpool. And after that, then we have our Smart Factory Expo in Exhibition Centre Liverpool. And again, IFM is running 7 free-to-attend workshops. Specifically, I'd like to highlight these ones which are more relevant to the topic we're discussing today. So the first one at 10 o'clock on the 14th, that's next Thursday, is Discover the Benefits of Road Mapping for Strategic Planning. And then at 1 o'clock, Technology Acquisitions and Partnerships. So these are very relevant to the topic we're discussing today. If you'd like to attend those, they're free to attend at the Smart Factory Expo. These are running in IFM's dedicated theatre on the expo floor. They are running workshops on the 13th and 14th. Please join us there. Again, free to attend, as is the Smart Factory Expo. If you'd like to sign up, if you haven't already, visit digital-manufacturing-week.com or simply Google Digital Manufacturing Week. For now, though, thank you, Florian, for today's presentation. It's been great having you here. And of course, thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks for having me, and everybody, good luck, I hope that it's increased your thought process and helped you for your daily business.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone.